Hi everyone, today we're going to be talking about Leasehold Reform and the Leasehold Reform Bill that's going to be read in Parliament this year and all the changes that are coming your way. My name's Neil Harding.
My name's Mark Ashworth and welcome to Property Insight. It's really important that you click the like button if you like this video, subscribe to the channel and add any comments below. It really helps us to grow the channel and to reach and help more people that want to know about property investment.
The King's Speech, November 24, included...
I bet you all watched it religiously.
Oh yeah, every second.
Yeah.
Included quite a lot about the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Bill, which is going to be read in Parliament before the end of this year. So, what does this say? So there's going to be potentially all sorts of changes in the whole leasehold. And in actual fact, the whole direction of travel on this is basically no one likes leasehold. So leasehold might change in the future completely, including even, I think, there's consultation as part of this that perhaps leasehold just needs to be done away with completely. That's quite nuclear, but it could happen in the next few years. But the law is highly likely going to change in 2024.
So that puts a whole new light on buying things like flats and whatnot, which are potentially a little bit cheaper because of these charges and whatnot. Although it won't rule out service charges, of course, but it does mean that when you come to renew your lease, you're not having to negotiate over 125 years because it needs to have at least 80 to have a mortgage on it.
Yeah, that's one of the problems with leasehold flats at the moment, particularly, is that when you're looking to buy a leasehold flat, quite often, if you want to get a mortgage on it, you need 80 years or more. Some lenders will need 90 and some lenders need even more than that. And so you certainly don't want to let your remaining period to drop below 80 years because then it becomes very expensive to extend the lease. It's quite expensive to extend a lease sometimes anyway. In the summer of 2022, the law changed and it became possible to do a statutory lease extension of 90 years. And if you extended the lease by 90 years under that law, then the ground rent disappeared to a peppercorn rent. So it basically disappears to zero. So that's already been in place for over a year now. But what the Leasehold Reform Bill is going to propose is that the 90-year extension is going to become 990-year lease extension, which is obviously massively different. So almost feels like, substantially like a freehold, really. It's kind of, 990 years is just so long.
10 times the length.
Yeah, it's so long. And it's going to become quicker, easier and cheaper to do it as well. So, it is quite an expensive thing to extend a lease.
Yeah, I think that's really important. And of course, when it does go to 990 years, you're going to have a lot less lease extensions to do, aren't you? Because, these things are just going to come into essentially feeling like a freehold property. The other thing that, of course, has absolutely stopped that you can't really now buy a leasehold house, although there was a period of time where leaseholds for some houses existed. But they did actually they've shelved that, and that's not happening anymore. But it does mean that if anybody is in a leasehold house, I do believe that will be reformed.
Yeah, as part of the reform proposal, they're just basically going to ban leasehold houses altogether. Not leasehold flats, but they're going to ban leasehold flats.
So Neil, we've spoken on this channel before about whether we prefer leasehold flats or freehold houses. I think both of us probably are in the freehold house camp as a preference, but obviously it always depends on where you're investing and where your tenants are going to be and what your, let's say, tenant avatar looks like. So if you're in a larger city, maybe Manchester, Birmingham, London, places like that obviously, there is a high demand for people wanting to live in the city, chances are, those flats are going to be quite popular. So what would you say if I said to you, well, if you're investing in some kind of city centre, would this make you reconsider flats? No.
Would it make me reconsider? I think I'll always be open to the idea of a flat. I think one of the things that they've put in the consultation paper and about the reform bill is that actually flats might be owned through other means rather than leasehold. They might be owned through a share of common hold, for example, which might become a lot more popular way of owning flats instead of the leasehold. A leasehold is something that everyone's very familiar with and it's quite common. Actually, share of common hold for flat ownership has been around for many, many years, and I've seen them on the market And I remember the first time I saw one years ago and I thought, well, what's this? But you know, it can be done that way. So I think flats will always have a place, especially in city centres,
Yeah,
as
I
investment
agree.
properties.
I agree. And I think you just, again, it's like any investment, you have to do your numbers. But I think for me, if I was considering flats, I think having a 990-year lease, or let's say over 900 years, would make me far more likely to want to buy something like that. I mean, I've seen some stuff that's been 110 years, 120 years. I'm a long-term buy and hold investor, right? So I wouldn't really want to get to 20 years time and then found that I had a bit of a problem on my hand with a 90-year-old lease that then had, let's say, devalued slightly because of that lease. For me, I want things to go up in value, right? And so therefore, I'd really only consider stuff that had long leases on it anyway. So I think it's a good thing for investors. I certainly think it's a good thing for people that are buying stuff like that.
Yep.
My brother-in-law in particular went through a big headache when he tried to do a lease extension on his flat, trying to get hold of the freeholder, trying to agree, trying to work out what the value of the lease was, involving solicitors on both sides, and then having to negotiate and argue. And I mean, just for homeowners that really just want to buy a home and live in it, I can't imagine anything worse than having to go through that process. It's bad enough buying a house, isn't it, through conveyancing, let alone then trying to have to negotiate your way through a lease extension, which obviously most people probably wouldn't really know where to start. So they're relying on other people, in the first case, professionals that are going to cost you money anyway. So yeah, I think it's great news all round. Really, really great news. Is there anything else that we need to cover on it?
I think it's interesting news for any property investors out there who actually specialise in short-term leases. Because there's a niche strategy out there for people that just focus on short-term leases. You know, they're sort of looking for bargains where they can mop up really cheap flats that are priced super low, and it's because actually there's only 30 years, 20 years, 40 years, pick a number, remaining on the lease. Well, you've got to wonder whether or not, is that strategy, well, it's certainly going to be impacted by this, I think, but is it even going to exist in 2, 3, 4, 5 years' time? I don't know.
So what you're saying then is that if it exists now, you want to be perhaps looking at those really cheaper flats that do have a really short lease on them, because if you buy them, chances are in a couple of years' time, it's not going to really cost you too much to extend them.
And also, as part of the Reform Bill, they're proposing that so there used to be a rule where you had to own or had to have the lease for 2 years as a minimum as a leaseholder before you could actually apply to do the statutory lease extension. That's probably going to disappear as well. So from day one of ownership, you can just get the lease extended. So it's just going to completely change this whole space for leasehold.
I wonder if you'd be able to do it during conveyancing. That would be interesting.
Maybe.
Yeah, so you could
Start
actually
the process.
have the lease extended whilst you were actually doing the conveyancing, which would be, well, fantastic.
Amazing. Right.
So when we have more news on it, obviously we'll come back to you with another video. But I hope so far you found that insightful information on the Leasehold Reform. So thanks again for watching, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment below.